In this video, we're going to talk about the fundamentals around rewards and recognition. That's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On this show, you get expert insight into all kinds of things that have to do with HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or the podcast to keep learning from my smart and experienced guests. Today, my guest is Sarah McVanel. Sarah is a recognition expert, professional speaker, coach, and author. She's also started a movement called F.R.O.G, which I'm going to be really interested in hearing about. It stands for Forever Recognize Others' Greatness. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am so good and looking forward to this. Okay, so I do actually want to start with F.R.O.G. So talk to me about F.R.O.G. What is it and why is that important? And maybe add that context of the employment environment.
Yeah, well, actually came out of an employment context. So easy place to start. When my colleagues and I worked in organizational development, we'd often be asked to go in and help teams that were just imploding at the seams. Occasionally, we'd have the good fortune of helping high-performing teams and teams that were maybe newly forming. However, it was often those ones where we identified that were really low in their satisfaction and engagement scores, or that there was some really serious things that were happening, like maybe bullying, disruptive behavior.
Right.
So we would go in and we try to work with them, whether it be me or once I became, a leader, members of the team, we had to have a consistent approach, some standardized ways that we knew worked. And we found the most common strategy that worked right away and so quickly was recognition. We had to help them be able to see their own greatness and be able to recognize each other's. Because I don't know about you in the environments that you've been in, but can you really get any traction on teamwork and collaboration and innovation and even just basic things like stopping your revolving door if people don't appreciate each other? So F.R.O.G actually came out of some work with one of those groups. And, here we're filming this during COVID. Our poor healthcare folks are in crisis. Well, this was actually a healthcare group.
Okay.
And it was a group of very senior specialized nurses. And there was a lot of incivility happening, which is sadly not uncommon in any time. And they're all doing their best. But when you are just depleted and you're so short staffed, it's really hard to keep your stuff together. Yeah, it's not right. We still have to do something. Well, in doing a lot of work and helping folks to be able to appreciate each other. And frankly, we had to start with them recognizing themselves because it's so hard. You lose yourself. You lose your sense of confidence, you start to question your skills and your value in the team. And then that revolving door makes you short staffed, or everybody's even shorter with each other. It's just this vicious cycle. Well, at the end of a 2-year amount of work, like this was a very serious commitment. This team, they buckled down. They did the work. And it was a member of the team that said to them, hey, how would we remember? And healthcare loves acronyms. Lots of industries loves acronyms, but healthcare loves a good acronym. So they said, so what would be an acronym? What would be a way that we could remember it? Especially, if we're leaving you guys and you're doing this important work, how will you remember? What will be your anchor? And somebody said, well, what about F.R.O.G? We have to forever recognize others' greatness. And it stuck. Yes. And this team, they fully embraced it. They put up F.R.O.G posters and they started making F.R.O.G cakes, and it was a labor and delivery department. Could you imagine being a woman in labor coming in like huffing and puffing and seeing like F.R.O.G stuff all over? Like, this baby better not come out amphibian. It's like they actually really had fun with it. They would F.R.O.G the moms, and it became a verb. So every time they recognize each other, their patients, the family members, other members of other departments, they would F.R.O.G each other. So that's what F.R.O.G is. And so now I carry squishy F.R.O.Gs in my purse. And when I see people doing great things, I randomly catch them in those acts of greatness and be like, hey, have you been F.R.O.G lately?
I love it though. I love it. And they really took it and owned it. And I know that in another episode that we're planning to do, we're going to talk about that, taking it, owning it, and making it last. But anyways, we're still talking about the fundamentals here. So what is the difference between rewards and recognition And is one better than the other?
Yeah, what a great question. So that is an example of recognition. Recognition is relational.
Mm.
It's things like a thank you, a personal specific acknowledgments in that moment, certainly in a timely fashion. Rewards is often shared in the same breath as recognition. Rewards and recognition.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm. And frankly, us HR folks are a little bit quote guilty. Sorry to be blamey. I don't mean to be blamey.
No, I get it.
We can kind of like, all squish it because it was probably a course, right? Or like an NKE, national knowledge exam test question.
It might be.
So we got fixated on that. But rewards is really, it's the external validation that you have performed well, that you have done well, that you're contributing.
Yeah.
That would be more likely to be a bonus, a paycheck, mm-hmm. An award. Yeah. And it's not that we can't, there isn't an important role for rewards in workplace. So I don't want anyone thinking when, she's a recognition expert, she must think that recognition is the only thing. They both feed off of each other. I'm sure you and I would both agree that if we don't have a paycheck, it's called volunteering. So, we expect that.
Right.
It's just a lot of organizations, they think if I pay people and if maybe, they might get a bonus at the end of the year, then you're lucky to work here. Right. However, you and I both know in our current turnover crisis, the great resignation that we're in right now, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. And people expect an employee experience, and frankly, people deserve an employee experience that where they know that they matter and that they feel valued. And frankly, you will be rewarded with people performing better, behaving better, being less likely to leave. There's so many reasons why it needs to be unintentional rewards and recognition. And if you can't do both, you need to for sure do recognition well. Right. That's what every single person can do.
My next question was about the one or two best ways to reward and recognize employees, but maybe we should just talk about recognition.
Yeah, it's a great place to start because, you do one, that's pretty foundational.
Right.
And yet, just as a quick side note, we have it flipped, by the way. Conference Board of Canada, they do a study every 6 years on appreciation. And what they find is the biggest investment, financial investment, time investment that Canadian companies make is in long service awards. So really, if you think about that philosophy, it's we'll appreciate you in 5, 10, or whatever that first milestone is. Yes. That's so not going to cut it, not just in our future generations, but also like you and I mean, I don't know how old I'm 45. I'm a Gen Xer. I would not stick around somewhere that I might get formally rewarded in 5 years and be gifted a rubber chicken dinner. But that's what that's largely what Canadian companies do. So I think it's a great idea to talk about rewards first as the foundation, because that's what we can do. Every single person in the organization can do it. It doesn't require a budget. It can be done.
Did you mean their recognition? Recognition is the foundation.
Sorry, yes, recognition. Okay. Good catch. See? Active listening skills. A+, yes. Recognition. So the 3 ways that we actually have found in our research. So first book, Forever Recognize Others' Greatness, we actually really wanted to validate that the things that we had been seeing in working with teams at the front line, with people in their work environments, we have managed to validate it in looking at this massive database of engagement surveys. Okay. So top 3 ways people want to be appreciated. Actually, let me ask you first, if you could be, when you think about the ways in which you felt most valued at work, how your colleagues, your boss would treat you, what form did that take? Like if you could only be appreciated one way for the rest of your career, how would you want that to be delivered?
I would want them to tell me about it in specifics.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the data is showing us, is that 95% of people say, tell me thank you, verbally, tell me thank you. 92% of people say, make it specific and timely. So those are the first top 2 ways. Verbal thank you, tell me specifically what I'm doing well. That doesn't matter what medium, just make sure it's specific. And the third way is write me a thank you note. I mean, I'm actually curious because I ask everybody this. Do you keep your thank you notes?
I've kept some of them for sure. I have. For sure I have, and I can think of one that's like in my filing cabinet here, right? I mean, yes, for sure. And I love writing thank you notes too for that.
Yeah. It makes you feel good too. Like
yes,
that.
Totally.
It's such a great point though, Andrea, that you feel good. It's the act of giving recognition as well as receiving it that is so powerful. Yeah. So that's the other, I think, delicious thing about recognition is you have a chance to forever be part of somebody's future. This person who wrote you the thank you note, even if the ink fades and you don't quite remember the words, you still remember the feeling. You probably do remember who this fun person was, even though you may forget you may not even remember what your boss's name was, or I don't know, which job was that? I just remember it was him. It actually it imprints in our limbic level, in our emotional center, because it triggers the emotional center of our brain, our limbic system. It actually encodes as a memory at a deeper level than the average interaction at work, because there's a whole lot of, as my kids would say, meh about work. So if you want to not be meh at work and you want to actually be that great boss, that person that everybody wants to work with, that people will remember you, even though you worked with them 20 years ago, recognize them. The opposite is true as well, is that when we are hypercritical, when we're cruel, when we are not compassionate, when people are struggling, when we don't give people the benefit of the doubt, and we don't take that as an opportunity to see their greatness, even when it is very well hidden, perhaps even to them, then we can imprint on their memories in a bad way. We can also have what they call in customer service a recovery attempt. This is also the time where you can encode in their memory as being a kind, compassionate, great human. So
you've touched on this, but maybe you can summarize it. What are some tips on doing recognition well?
Well, it's following the platinum rule. So let's say I like public recognition and ice cream. And I'm like, I'm going to do a big thing for my team. I'm going to give everybody ice cream and public kudos.
Right.
Yet when I go to recognize you are lactose intolerant and you are so crushingly shy. Like this is mortifying. Yes. So I think I've done a great job. And maybe 5 out of the 7 people on the team loved it. Yeah. But 2 couldn't eat the ice cream without a lot of pain later. Yeah. and they were embarrassed, and it actually was unintended consequences. So I would say, one of the things that we could all stand to do is to learn more about what people want and need. I actually have a resource on my website, greatnessmagnified.com, under cool stuff, where there's a recognition checklist. It's a 1-page checklist. You can download it, give it to your colleagues. Like, you don't have to be the boss to find out how people most want to be recognized. So if I had to bottom line one tip for everybody, ask how do people want to be appreciated? Because if you only do it one way, it is probably the way you want to be appreciated, and it will not work for every single person. Yes, 95% of people say thank you, so that's pretty safe. Like, I can't really embarrass you if I say thank you so much and other people overhear it. But if I say thank you so much, you are the best engineer we've ever had in this team, and oh gosh, my husband would die of embarrassment. I would be like, yes, everybody. Look at me.
If you found this as energizing as I have, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. The question of today is actually some action. Is there someone in your life that you want to recognize? Do it, and then come back and comment in our comment section. So HR is often responsible for programs. So can you tell me what some features of a good rewards and recognition program?
Yeah. Well, this is like, this
I know,
huge.
like take a month Well, may a lifetime worth of work and boil it down into,
Yeah.
2 minutes,
Well,
please.
I actually, and lots of people are very, very serious about doing this right now, which is why I put all the tools that I use when I would build recognition programs all together in a course, in a program, so that people can walk through the steps. But let me give you kind of the Cole's Notes versions of what I walk people through in a kind of a systematized way. Number one is you want to make sure, you want to gauge how much this is about the company versus this is about the person, because it needs to be a both and. It needs to be about recognition, and rewards are a way to reinforce who we are. It's the connective tissue. Recognition is the connective tissue between people. So if your corporate values, for sure you want to reward based on that. Let's say you have a safety target, 0 days of harm. I have an amazing client, Solaris Pipelines, Northern BC, and they're in Alberta too. Every single meeting is about do no harm, zero harm. It's in their values. It's everything they talk about. They are so serious about it. It's not just something that's on a mission statement.
Yep.
And so, what I would say to them is, if they didn't have a recognition program that was about safety and no harm, I'd say, you talk about this all the time and it's not in your formal program. So that would be one thing I'd say, is look for the examples of what you really believe in and that you aspire to be as an organization. That's the first thing that I would say to anyone who's looking in HR, who's looking to build it, is what you say and who you are truly what you recognize personally as well as formally. So that would be kind of like the top to tail sort of view, right? The culture top to tail. The wide view is it from recognition, so the informal, less formal relational things, right through to formal things. So that's the first blush, because once you kind of gauge that, then you can see how much heavy lifting do you need to do. You might not need to do very much. You might want to, a company like Solaris, they just get it. They have some way of recognizing rewards. It may be just, let's say, polishing up that if they wanted to. I mean, they do a great job, so they probably don't even need to do that. But it might be a cascading, a form, the way in which they do it so well as an executive team. They might want to do some supervisor field sort of training and talk about, do a little bit of workshop on what could this look like when we're in the field, when it's negative 45 and we're all stressed and it's a bad day. What does that look like? So know kind of where your air anchors are. Some people, they have nothing. People don't feel valued. It's this huge revolving door. So if you see huge signs that you have people problems, that's where I would assume that where you have people problems, you have lack of appreciation and recognition. And then when you know that, you can see, do we have any formal visible acknowledgments? And if so, do our actions line up? There's no point in having formal rewards that people look at and they go, well, it'd be nice if we could do no harm, except I'm working in hazards constantly and nobody cares. Every time I report it, nothing's ever done. So you're actually doing more harm than good by having formal rewards, because it sets up expectations that aren't even true. So look at those visible things. If you have nothing visible, nothing very formal, there might be an opportunity to bring together an employee resource group to start building what are our cultural anchors. And I want to be very clear with people who are listening to this. You don't have to say we do values awards. Nobody ever joined a company and said in there when they, after they do the interview, and you have any questions? Yes, I'm just wondering. I noticed on your website you have 5 values. Do you actually have an employee reward for each of them? Nobody's ever asked that question, because it's a contrived thing that we as corporations think we should probably have rewards. I know, let's attach them to our values. That's not how people live their values. People are not going to live the values because you have this as a reward. They're not going to be more compassionate because you have a formal reward about it. However, if you don't have compassion and you're working to build a more compassionate culture, you could perhaps envision, what would that look like? How would we see and have that demonstrated? And if you end up having a formal reward, create the criteria in which to identify who gets rewarded based on the behavioral indicators you want to see more of. Otherwise, you may find yourself having unintended consequences, such as we have very performance-based cultures, some or industries more than others, where you get into this incredible competitive culture to be able to get that performance bonus or to be able to get the above and beyond.
Yeah, for sure.
For some companies, it's above and beyond because I stepped all over people to get there. So that's not really a very simple answer because it's a very big question, but that might get some of the sort of mental digestive juices. That was a really good metaphor. Get the wheels turning. How about that? That's better.
Okay, so this question, when we were preparing for this, we got some folks involved off of LinkedIn, and this question comes off of LinkedIn. So how do you keep rewards and recognition from being lame? Like, you're giving out rewards. Oh, you showed up for work. Good for you. Here's your reward and your recognition. How do you avoid that?
So how do you make something lame is if it's trite, like, we have a mission statement that says we care about our people. And then you lay them all off in COVID and you don't even call them the next day. So, come on. And it's part of the trite and artificial is when it's fake. It's just like, verbally, we talked a lot earlier about it. Verbally, our acknowledgement has to be authentic. Same with your formal program. You can't make everybody happy. There's that natural bell curve, right? You're 20% who are your cheerleaders, 20% who are miserable no matter what happens, and the other people in the middle. It's the people in the middle that are the true test as to if your recognition program.
Okay. I think that's a good rule of thumb. And you're not designing for your program for the people who are going to be negative no matter what.
Oh,
and
gosh,
cynical.
Never design anything for them.
Yeah.
Listen to them.
Yeah.
In fact, here's a great way that you leverage that to your advantage when you're building a recognition program is have one of them on your employee resource group and say, how does it seem? Your question about like, how does it seem fake or trite or, what mistakes to avoid, like any of those sorts of things, ask them, they'll tell you. Give them a job to do and then appreciate them for it. Wow, you're a great problem solver. Wow, you are so honest. Because they are. And
true.
Give them a reason to use it good rather than evil, Yeah. And the more you acknowledge them and the more they can utilize that, because those are assets. You just have to give them channeling.
Yeah.
So the key thing about, to come full circle back to your question around a recognition program being meaningful is it is an example of your culture.
If someone wants to learn more about this, I know you have resources, but where, including your resources, where should people go?
They can hop on over to my website, greatnessmagnified.com. There's all kinds of resources that folks can use there. And in your show notes, we'll make sure to include some things like if people want to rebuild the recognition program, we'll give them information about, how they can do that themselves. But yeah, I post a lot on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Last name is spelled McVanel. Every day I'm sharing a new study, a report, I'm sharing examples of recognition. So if you're like, I don't know how I would do that on LinkedIn, I do appreciation posts all the time. So yeah, that's probably another great place for us to connect.
Okay. All right. I'll add all those links in the description of this episode. Okay, thanks, Sarah. That was inspiring. I've always loved recognition, actually, and I'm inspired to do more arising out of this episode. I did an episode on the employee experience with Sarah and I talked about earlier on, and that link is right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.